All right, folks, this is Harris Sultan, and anti-Semitism has reached new heights in the West. It's always existed in the Muslim world. And a reminder, this is why we need Israel to exist, because if there is no Israel, there is no homeland for Jewish people who've been targeted, butchered, massacred, genocided all around the world, in every part of the world, except for India, though. I think India is the only place where they have never been massacred or genocided. And they've been living there since the time of Cyrus the Great. But other than that, every place they've been to, they have been scapegoated for their local problems, and they've always been victimized. So, in the wake of the October 7th terrorist attack, when the world should have said, wow, anti-Semitism is well and truly alive. Yes, I know there's a political element to that, but that's not it. From the day the October 7th terrorist attack happened, people started blaming Israel. And we know why, because Muslims unfortunately have a different set of rules and values that they follow. And they wanted the whole world to side with the Palestinians as they were massacring the Jewish people on October the 7th. And for the most part, it actually worked. Israel did well in terms of maintaining its statehood. I don't agree with everything that Israel does, by the way. I'm not in favor of those settlements. I do think that we should have found a two-state solution a long time ago, but that hasn't happened. And again, the entire blame doesn't go to Israel either. Separate topic. But Israel has done well to maintain its statehood, but it lost the war of propaganda or the war of narratives, because at least in the last 20 years or so, Muslim propagandists, influencers, they've been spreading their tentacles in Western universities. And all of that was happening kind of in our sight, but nobody paid attention. People like Jordan Peterson, Christopher Hitchens, they tried to warn us back in 2010 and 11 that the culture in Western universities was changing very rapidly, but nobody paid attention. We just thought that maybe this is just the eventual end goal of liberalism on steroids, postmodernism. You have your truth, I have my own truth. Truth is relative. It's not objective anymore. All that bullshit. But nobody paid attention. And the Jewish people who were supposed to be controlling the world, who were supposed to be the people behind the scenes, somehow not paid any attention to what these Muslim propagandists were doing behind the scenes. So now they're paying the price. So anti-Semitism is through the roof. And one such example is this guy, Michigan anti-Semite, and he's a Muslim, by the way, plotted to massacre kids at Jewish daycare. Look at his target. He picked a daycare center. He didn't pick a synagogue, not that it would be a good choice either, but it just tells you the level of their depravity. He's like, you know what? I'm going to go and get Jewish kids. So he picked a Jewish daycare and tried to buy assault weapons to use for God's wrath. That's what Feds say. So look at this guy. Look at him. That's not it. What happened in Boulder? So 1st of June, Boulder, Colorado. Mohammed Sabri Soleiman. Let's have a look at this guy. He also came to the US under Biden's open border policy. This guy. He's an Egyptian illegal migrant. He firebombed a group of Jewish people, and he wanted to kill as many people as he could. I don't think he succeeded. Let me see if there were any casualties. Anyway, so Mohammed Sabri Soleiman allegedly conducted a targeted attack on Run for Their Lives, a weekly event designed to raise awareness for the remaining hostages held in Gaza by Hamas, shouting, "Free Palestine," and "We have to end Zionists." He allegedly used a flamethrower type weapon and Molotov cocktails to injure 12 people. And it's not just limited to Muslims. See, this is the success of Muslim propagandists and petrodollars and the infiltration of Arab money into Western universities, that they haven't just radicalized their own people. Muslims will always stand by Palestinians. And, there's a humanitarian argument to be made. That's fine. I get that. But that's not it. I've said it numerous times. It's not just about Palestine. It's about wiping Israel off the map. It's about making Jewish people live beneath the heel of Muslims because Muslims got used to doing it since 634 AD. That's when Umar conquered Jerusalem. And only for a brief period of time, it was recaptured by the Christians. But regardless, Jewish people were made to live as dhimmis in their own ancestral land. Anyway, my point was, it's not just the Muslims that they have brainwashed. It's other nationalities as well. All in the name of, oh, you're killing babies. Let's have a look here. So I remember this. Elias Rodriguez, this guy. Him. Look, looks like a normal person. But he got radicalized by this pro-Palestine propaganda. Let me read that to you. It was a young couple, Yaron Lischinski and Sarah Lynn Milgram. Let me show you their faces as well. It's important to remember them. It broke my heart when I saw them. Young people. Look at this, these people. So this beautiful couple was killed by this normal-looking person. This is a disease. He wanted to free Palestine by murdering Jewish people. How does that make sense? So he wasn't a Muslim. He was just a normal person who got radicalized by pro-Palestine propaganda. April 13th, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Cody Balmer, again, not a Muslim, allegedly broke into Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, set multiple fires, then called 911 and referred to Shapiro as a monster and blamed him for Palestinian deaths in the Israel-Hamas war. Now, that's reminding me of that guy. I forgot his name. Former U.S. Army vet. I made a video on him. He was also mentally disturbed, and he set himself on fire because he was unhappy with the way Israel was conducting this war that was started by Hamas, by the way. So anyway, the list can go on and on. I just want to share some statistics with you. I think Germany is the only country that is dealing with this tide of anti-Semitism seriously, and they are dealing with those people as they should. So in the United States, record high incidents. In 2023, the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, recorded 8,873 anti-Semitic incidents in the US. So in 2023 alone, marking a 140% increase from 2022 and the highest number since tracking began in 1979. So it's at an all-time high. The FBI reported 1,832 anti-Jewish hate crimes in 2023, a 63% rise from the previous year. So if you think that the ADL is just a Jewish advocacy group and they exaggerate things, then look at the data by the FBI. Jews comprising about 2% of the US population were the target in 68% of all religion-based hate crimes. Now, that is a staggering number. They only make up 2% of the US population, yet they get 68% of the hate of the entire country. What happened to they run the world? Jesus. You know what? I used to think, I've said it before, I used to think that Jews overplay or they exaggerate this anti-Semitic claim. But I have, honestly speaking, hand on heart, I have understood the meaning of anti-Semitism now. Even if you say that Jewish people deserve a homeland, just that statement, if you replace Jew with any other nationality, it is acceptable. But if you say Jewish people deserve a homeland, you're evil. End of discussion. No, I really don't know. What is it about Jewish people? I really don't understand. What is it about Jewish people? I think history is just not kind to people who lose wars. I think Jewish people lost their homeland, what, in 48 AD or something like that? They never had a homeland since then. Then you would think that, oh, people who've been victimized by history, the world will be kinder to you. No, they actually wouldn't be, because since Jews were forced to leave Jerusalem, their ancestral homeland, they were forced to scatter all around the world. And they obviously, like any other community, they lived in tight-knit communities that tried to preserve their culture and religion. And they were always scapegoated. If there's a problem, blame the Jews. That was always the case. It has always been the case. That's what happened to Christians in the early Roman Empire as well. What Nero did to early Christians, because it was a tiny group of people. They were weird. They were outsiders. Let's just blame them. And Wherever Jews went, except for India, though, this is a remarkable success story in India, and India should be proud of that. Except for India, everywhere they went, people always blamed them when they were totally innocent of the accusations. So I think that's what we can learn, that history or society or humanity is not kind to you, even if you've been victimized by the world. It's not just going to be like, oh, were you wronged by someone? We're going to be ultra nice to you. That's not what happens. Another example comes to my mind, Kashmiri Hindus. Kashmiri Hindus were forced to leave their ancestral land, Kashmir. Nearly 100,000 Kashmiri Pandits were forced to leave their ancestral homeland in Kashmir. And they moved to mainland India. And nobody talks about them. They never took up arms against their oppressors. Nobody talks about them. If I told you about this Kashmir dispute between India and Pakistan, you will think that, oh, Kashmiris are Muslims, so they want to be with Pakistan, or that's what at least Pakistan claims, then that's it. But nobody, Kashmiri Pandits don't even come into the equation. They were victimized too. They were like the Jews who were forced out of their homeland. But history, society, nobody's kind to losers. I think that's the only lesson we can learn from it. Anyway, I'll just wrap up this video. So campus incidents, anti-Semitic activity on college campuses surged by 321% in 2023, with leading universities like Harvard and MIT facing criticism for inadequate responses. I think there was a US congressional hearing where a Harvard president was asked if genociding Jews is a genocidal statement or not. And I think she said, no, it depends on the context. And she was white, of course, she wasn't a Muslim. Something seriously broken and wrong with our society. Again, that is not to say that it's okay for Palestinian or Gazan children to die. It's a totally different issue, and that has to be looked at in a different context. So post-October 7 spike, over 5,200 anti-Semitic acts were recorded after October 7, 2023, averaging about 24 incidents per day. 24 incidents per day. I think Donald Trump has spoken about this as well. Oh my God, look at this. Look what just showed up on my feed. A Palestinian refugee was arrested in Egypt today after pulling a knife on a local woman who asked him to move his car, which was blocking hers. So this is a Palestinian guy in Egypt. Oh, isn't that anti-Palestinian? What happened in this? This is reminding me of how Pakistanis turn on Afghans. I don't know if you know, Pakistan has deported somewhere around 1 million Afghan refugees who've been living in Pakistan for nearly 40 years. Some don't even speak Pashto language, or some have never been to Afghanistan. They were born and raised in Pakistan, but Pakistan mercilessly just kicked them out. Why? Because there was a higher than average percentage of criminality amongst Afghan youth in Pakistan. So they said, well, you know what? Afghans commit more crime than average Pakistanis, so therefore, let's kick all the Afghans out. Nobody bat an eyelid. It's perfectly fine. But if we make the same argument in the West, that Algerians are committing more than average crime in France, then ooh, the far left wokies say, no, you can't talk about mass deportation. It's the same in Britain, vis-a-vis people of Pakistani heritage. And in Australia, unfortunately, people with African heritage. Let me show you this horrible statistic. So Australia's taken a lot of African refugees, and a bulk of them have come from Southern Sudan. And guess what? As of 2018, Sudanese-born individuals made up approximately only 0.14% of Victoria's population, but accounted for about 1% of alleged offenders. But they're overrepresented in these crimes. So they make up only 0.14% of the overall Victorian population, yet they account for 3.8% of aggravated burglaries, 8.5% of aggravated robberies, 1.5% of car thefts, 1.8% of serious assaults, 4.9% of riot and affray offenses. Now, again, I'm not making a racist argument. I'm making a cultural argument. Some cultures have a higher propensity of committing violence than others. It's a fact. Somalis, I think, are okay, for example. Somalis are not overrepresented in criminality. Sudanese, for some reason, are. Donald Trump and Marco Rubio said something amazing, and I think we need mass deportations. mass deportations. There is no solution to this. So Donald Trump tweeted, yesterday's horrific attack in Boulder, Colorado will not be tolerated in the United States of America. He came in through Biden's ridiculous open border policy, which has hurt our country so badly. I think Trump writes his own tweets. They're so Trump-esque, aren't they? He must go out under Trump policy. Acts of terrorism will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This is yet another example of why we must keep our borders secure. Yes, and deport illegal anti-American radicals from our homeland. My heart goes out to the victims of this terrible tragedy and the great people of Boulder, Colorado. Marco Rubio also made a very interesting tweet. This is what Marco Rubio said. In light of yesterday's horrific attack, all terrorists, their family members, and terrorist sympathizers here on a visa should know that the Trump administration, we will find you, revoke your visa, and deport you. Sounded like Liam Neeson there. We need to see this in France. We need to see this in Britain. You saw what happened in France a couple of days ago. All non-French rioting in the streets of Paris. Paris looked like a war zone. It's so heartbreaking to see that. It's so heartbreaking. Some people say, oh, Harris, when are you going to self-deport yourself? First of all, I didn't come to Australia illegally. I am more than integrated. I have no allegiance to any other country than the one I live in. And I am a Western secular liberal at heart. So this is pretty sad. I worry that I think there's going to be a civil war in France and Britain in the next 5 to 10 years. And I worry for Australia. I've been trying to sound the alarm for many years that what's happening in Britain is going to eventually happen in Australia. And in Australia, unfortunately, it's the African gang problem. Their number is very small right now. I'm not saying that there's going to be a takeover. It's still at a very early stage. It's nowhere near where Britain and France are. But have a look. This is what France was in 1998 after winning the 1998 Football World Cup. This is how they were celebrating. Apparently, these riots, they're calling it football hooliganism. Look at the football hooliganism back in 1998. And look at the football hooliganism today. Look at them. Look at all those Frenchmen. Look at all those beautiful Frenchmen and women. I'm laughing, but it's so sad. Look at this. I got more videos. YouTube, just a disclaimer, this is not... Oh, this is an interesting Trump video. I think it's relevant.
You've seen what happened when Europe opened their doors to jihad. Look at Paris. Look at London. They're no longer recognizable. And I'm going to get myself into a lot of trouble with the folks in Paris and the folks in London. But you know what? That's the fact. They are no longer recognizable. And we can't let that happen to our country. We have incredible culture, tradition. Nothing wrong with their culture, their tradition. Can't let that happen here, and I'll never let it happen to the United States of America.
Go on, Trump. Don't let that happen to the US. This is what he meant by that. Look at this. This is London. This is London. I'm sorry. It's just ugly. I'm sorry. This is my culture. But so I can say that this is pathetic. This is the video I was talking about. A white boy getting beaten up by an African gang. Look at this. This is England. 1,194 illegal migrants came just last week. Look at this. Look at all the women and children. These are genuine refugees. Genuine refugees making their way to Britain away from a war zone. They're coming in huge numbers with their women and children. Look at that. Where are the women and children? This is an invasion. Look at this. Look at this. Imagine if this was your daughter. Look at all these beautiful Frenchmen terrorizing. Oh my God. Look at that. YouTube, there is no loss of life or injury. Just giving you a heads up. These are just random videos. There's no violence in these videos. It's just ugly. Look at them. Look at all these Frenchmen. Are you culturally enriched? So I have a theory, Just like there are different stages of human development, there are different stages of societal development. There is a social evolutionary ladder as well. And some cultures are at the bottom, some are at the middle, and some are at the top. I think Western liberal democracies reached the top of those ladders by the year 2000. Let's just have a round number. And then they became the victims of their own success. They became tolerant. They became too tolerant towards intolerance. They thought because they were successful to minimize or even remove violence from their society to a certain extent, they thought that, oh, now we can let anyone from any culture come into our country and they would behave like us. It obviously didn't happen. And it changed so quickly. It happened within 20 years. So this illusion that when you bring a person from a less advanced society and release him into a more advanced society, then he would behave like the locals there. Now, obviously, this is not an absolutist statement. I'm not saying everyone is like that or everyone is not going to be like that. But obviously, we go by percentages. So if the person comes from a more primitive society, I'm going to get in trouble. All right. You know what? I'll just leave it at that. So yeah, it's pretty sad what's happening. But I think we're going to need radical solutions to this radical problem. All cultures are not the same, and mass deportations is the only answer. 2 strikes and you're out. That's how it should be. I think it was Michael Holman who said, a journalist asked, are you going to be breaking families apart if you deport a father? You're going to separating a father from his children and his wife? And he said, no, they can all go together then. That's perfectly fine. That's how it should be. If I get deported for committing a crime and my family says, oh, you know what, you're taking our son or my husband away from me, then nobody's stopping you. You can go and live with him in Pakistan. I probably wouldn't survive in Pakistan because I've committed too much blasphemy, but that's how it should be. I don't see anything wrong with that. See, when I moved to Australia, my Australian partner said, being an Australian is a privilege, it's not a right. And it actually makes sense. And especially for me, someone who was an outsider. I came from a third world country. I hated Pakistan. I wasn't born for that country. I just didn't like it, like, I mean, yeah, there are good and bad people everywhere. There's good and bad aspects of cultures. I just wasn't born for that country. Yeah, I just hated everything about it. I wanted freedom. Even when I was a young man, I wanted freedom. I wanted intermingling. I wanted clean roads. I wanted 24-hour electricity. I wanted all of those things. So I wasn't born for that. So ever since I was 7 or 8 years old, I wanted to go to a Western country. So I ended up in Australia. I wanted to go to America, but anyway, I ended up in Australia. They didn't give me a visa because in 2003, a 19-year-old Muslim man trying to go to America after people who look like me brought down 2 of their buildings and killed 3,000 people. I understand they didn't want to let me in, but Australia took me in. So anyway, that's a story for another day. All right, that's it. Until next time, ta-da.